Hey, I don't have a real background right now. Don't worry about that. Let's talk about after the revolution. So, it is not at all uncommon for dystopian stories to take place in the ruins of the United States. There is an entire genre of crappy young adult novels that do that, and I have spoken about that genre extensively for some reason. I don't know why I've done that. But what's rarer nowadays is dystopian novels that really understand the fracture points in American society today, rather than making something where food is illegal or you have to pay for air or something just weird like that. After the Revolution focuses on real issues such as the internet radicalizing people, Christian fundamentalism, political corruption causing issues to be unaddressed, unfettered capitalism, and the fact that Texas sucks.
Hey, Patrick, what am I now?
Stupid?
No, I'm Texas!
All of these are real problems in the real world today. And if for no other reason than the book actually acknowledges those problems and talks about them a bit, I really like it just for that reason.
This is the introduction song. It's not very good, but it's not too long.
So the author of this book is Robert Evans, and he is a journalist. He is an actual journalist who has been to war zones before, so he knows what it looks like when societies fall apart. And he commits to detail in a way that makes all of this creepily plausible. You know, this isn't about teenagers being sassy and fighting the man. This gets pretty grim. And, as the title implies, the book is about what happens after the evil government has already been defeated. Most of the time, that's when the story ends. This book takes place in the year 2070, about 20 years after something just called the Revolution destroyed the United States. We don't get a whole lot of information on the Revolution and what it was, but it was pretty bad. Now the US is just a dozen smaller warring countries, each with their own rebellions and their own severe social issues. We don't get a full list of them, and we don't see a map anywhere, but the story does take place in Texas. It follows three characters who wind up in a difficult spot and wind up having to work together. The first one is Manny. He is a guide for journalists and tourists who want to go, to the war zone and see some of the fighting. His job is to get them in and get them out safely, and he makes good money for it, and the whole time he's planning on leaving the country as soon as he saves up enough. Then there's Roland, who is a bionically enhanced super soldier with amnesia who gets asked to help some people in exchange for getting his memories back, and he agrees to that, even though he seems kind of happy without his memories, but whatever, we need him to go along with it to get the story started. And then the last character is Sasha, a religious extremist who runs away from home to become a Christian ISIS bride. I'll explain that a bit more later. Basically, there is a really big rebellion made up of religious extremists called the Heavenly Kingdom, and everywhere they go, they outlaw abortion, they make women little more than house servants, they publicly execute gay people and other people who don't fit into their idea of what's right because there's no hate like Christian love, and basically just all the things that religious conservatives implement when they take over a country. It's clearly inspired by the Islamic State and other similar organizations, and early on in the book they launch a major offensive. Manny and Roland get called in to help rescue some people that they've taken captive. And there's more to say, but before we get to that, let's have a word from this video's sponsor, NOLA.
This video is made possible by today's sponsor, NOLA. Head to nolamattress.com/JamesTullis and use my code JamesTullis to get $50 off your mattress plus 2 free pillows with select mattresses. NOLA is an award-winning mattress and sleep accessory brand specializing in premium mattresses that offer exceptional pressure relief, cooling, and durability, and it's conveniently shipped to your door totally for free. Once the mattress is delivered, it's very easy to set up. It's rolled up nice and neat in a box. All you have to do is open the box, place the mattress in your desired location, and cut open the plastic wrapping. Once the air reaches it, it unfolds and expands all on its own. Some people might accidentally put the mattress down sideways and have to scramble to fix it. You'd have to be a complete idiot to do that, though. And once the mattress is set up, it's super comfortable. You can lie down on it, flop back on it, you can even sleep on it. I sleep on my back, so it was nice to get a firm mattress that offers exceptional pressure relief. I've had it for over a week now, and I'm out like a light every night. And if I decide, in a moment of madness, to sleep on my side, it's pretty comfortable then, too. Sleeping better improves every aspect of your life. Since getting this mattress, I've had a healthier appetite, more energy, and it's easier to focus on important tasks. Even when I'm not sleeping, it's a great spot to lie down on and read, or play on my phone, or watch TV, or just generally relax. NOLA mattresses have different levels of firmness, so you can customize to your liking. And on top of that, it has great cooling so things don't get too hot, along with great durability that makes it last a long time. There's even a 120-night sleep trial to test the mattress out and ensure you love it. If you don't, then just return it for a full refund. NOLA mattresses also include a limited lifetime warranty, and they offer financing options and flexible payment plans to make them even more affordable. I love my NOLA mattress, and I think you would too. If you're looking to upgrade your sleep, go to nolamattress.com/JamesTullis and use the code JamesTullis for $50 off your mattress and 2 free pillows with select mattresses. This is higher than what's being offered on site, so check them out while you can.
The first thing that I just absolutely loved about this book is how well it captures what it's like to try and live in a society that is in the process of constantly falling apart. There are some people who are actively trying to break it, either because they think they can create something better or because they just don't care and they just feel like breaking stuff. But then there's also people who are fighting to protect what's left with varying degrees of loyalty. And of course, there's tons of people who are looking to just escape. Like Manny, one of the main characters, he wants to flee the country and go somewhere safe. Like Germany is the big one that he talks about a lot, but also the United Kingdom and Croatia come up a few times. And his whole arc is basically about him trying to struggle with his desire to escape and his desire to try and help whoever he can. Because overall, he's a decent guy and he sees all this suffering around him and he's doing his best to ignore it, but he just can't. In fact, that's something I liked about this book overall. Things are grim and unpleasant, but they're not hopeless, and Manny does a good job of, personifying that sort of thing. I think that people who have lived in actual war zones like Syria, Sudan, Myanmar, Ukraine, I think people like that would identify with a lot of what goes on here and the ways that people react to what's going on around them. I don't know, I can't speak for them, I've never lived in a war zone, but I personally was very engrossed in it, because even when people or organizations do something dumb, it usually makes sense for them to act that way. I also really like how this book understands how complex the political and military situations can get in wartime or during times of civil strife. Because, again, with so many dystopian novels, not just young adult ones, but like in general, it's kind of just the government or the authority are one monolith, they're the bad guys, and then there's the rebellion who are one monolith, and that's kind of it. Like, weirdly enough, Breathe, a really, really crappy dystopian YA novel I read a couple of years ago, does a better job of showcasing how, yeah, okay, the rebels don't always get along and these conflicts tend to be multifaceted. But After the Revolution does a much better job of it. It shows how complex the situation is. Like I said, there are a dozen countries that, even if they aren't directly involved in the conflict that the story in this book focuses on, they do play some sort of role. And the armed forces are even more confusing because, countries have their own, actual standing militaries, but that's not enough in a lot of situations, just like in real life, so they do have actual militias all over the place which work with the government. The most prominent one in this book is called the Self-Defense Force, or SDF, and that's really a coalition of, dozens of other militias. It's made pretty clear, yeah, these guys, some of these militias are ideological, some of them are just attached to a specific area, like one town set it up to defend themselves, and the Canadians just came in and put them all under one umbrella so that it would make it easier to send them weapons and stuff. And there's other militias outside of the SDF. There are some neighborhoods that have their own militia of 50 guys just to protect that one area. And some of these militias are well trained and or well equipped, some of them aren't. The point is that the audience never gets a really clear look at the situation, and neither do the characters. We understand enough to follow along, but we're not experts, which, again, that's probably what it would be like for a lot of the people living there. That's what it's like to be in the middle of a chaotic environment. And the political situation, just like the military situation, it's not explained super well, but that's deliberate. Everything is in flux, and everyone is focused mostly on their own problems. We know that Texas is now an independent republic. We don't know the exact borders, but we know it's an independent republic, and it's implied to be extremely corrupt and libertarian. I assume they finally achieved their dream of abolishing age of consent laws. Austin is part of Texas, but it also seems to be some sort of autonomous zone, which is better run than the rest of the country, and the Texas government hates them for some reason. And then up in the north of the country, we have the Heavenly Kingdom, and they are slowly pushing down south. that's about all we know. And there's a bit of information for the other new countries, but we don't know that much. You know, we hear that California is doing pretty well for themselves. The South is also run by extreme Christians. Albuquerque is a monarchy now. I assume it's run by King Heisenberg. The point is, this isn't the sort of book where you really learn about the whole world that it takes place in. It's a book where you're thrown into a chaotic situation and you're made to feel the same way that the people who live there feel. And that's a big part of why I loved it. I loved being just as confused and scared and anxious as all the characters in this book. Now, at first, I really loved the villains of this book. The main villains were great. Later on, some issues arose, but they started off great. You know, there are a bunch of Christian extremists who call themselves the Heavenly Kingdom. They have taken over part of Texas, and they are violently expanding, and they have foreign fighters coming in to join them from all over the place. Although I do have to say, every time I read Heavenly Kingdom, it made me think of the Taiping Rebellion, which, if you're not familiar, basically in the 1800s, some Chinese guy declared himself to be the younger brother of Jesus, and then he tried to overthrow the government, and then 20 million people died.
What the hell did you just say?
I can't elaborate more than that. Just go on a Wikipedia binge. And early on in the book, when the Heavenly Kingdom's offensive first begins, that's some of the best action I've read in a while. Because there's this whole long sequence where it's nighttime and drones are attacking. Like, drones are up in the sky shooting missiles, shooting guns. Some of them are kamikaze drones that come down and blow things up. And it's terrifying and exhilarating all at the same time. That sequence was really, really good. Like, the other action sequences in the book, I don't think any of them are bad, but none of them come close to that one. And like I said, other countries are participating indirectly in this conflict. The Heavenly Kingdom is not so secretly getting a lot of support from the United Christian States, which is in what is today the South, which checks out, to be honest. I mean, the Heavenly Kingdom doesn't have kind things to say about the UCS, because they think they're not taking it far enough, but they are happy to, take weapons from them. So I don't know. Do with that information what you will. People fighting for the Heavenly Kingdom are usually just called martyrs as a nickname, and they are awful people. You know, in addition to having all this power and being genuinely intimidating and scary, they are just awful people. So they work really well as villains at first. However, later on, the battlefield gets skewed, and it's much more in favor of the heroes at that point. So they lose a lot of their intimidation factor, and the book tries to make them a bit more sympathetic and a bit more well-rounded, but the book's attempts at doing that just don't work. It makes them way more obnoxious than anything. This is a bit of a tangent, but I do feel that the martyrs should be doing a lot more Crusader LARPing. You know, they're already very dumb people, they're already historically illiterate. They should pretend to be the modern incarnation of a bunch of losers who repeatedly failed to accomplish their ill-defined goals. Because it's generally accepted that there were 8 crusades, crusades in the traditional sense, there were others that happened in other places. But generally speaking, it's understood that there were 8 crusades, and they all failed except for the first one. The fact that people, I don't know, lionize these guys and want to emulate them is very, very dumb. Now, something I liked about After the Revolution, but was still weak at times, was the 3 main characters. Because like I said, there's 3 we follow, Roland, Manny, and Sasha. I would say Manny is the most relatable, because if I was in that situation, yeah, I'd also be looking to get the hell out of Dodge. But Roland was my favorite. And Sasha, she has her moments, okay? I'll give her that. She's not a terribly written character, but she's not great overall. So there's Manny, who is trying to get by in a difficult situation. He wants to be callous, he wants to be selfish, but he just can't bring himself to do so. And by the end of the book, I would say that he's a decent guy with a pair of balls. You know, he's not some mega badass or anything, but he's a decent guy, and he's willing to put himself out there and put himself on the line. Roland, like I said, is my favorite because he's just a blast to follow. He's really, really fun every time he's around. Roland, like I said, is my favorite. He's just a blast to follow. Anytime he's around, he's just really, really fun to follow. He's a superhuman, and he's on drugs all the time. What about that doesn't sound awesome? Although, to be fair, everyone in this book is on drugs all the time. I'm talking hard drugs. Just constantly being very casually taken in like serious situations right before they go into battle, when they're just relaxing, they're always on hard drugs. Roland can fight a battalion of soldiers by himself, but he doesn't want to. He hates killing people and actively avoids it. In fact, at the beginning of the book, he's living in a shack kind of in the middle of nowhere, and whenever people come to mess with him, he doesn't kill them. He just hurts them and sends them away. There are other people who are enhanced, kind of like Roland, but none of them come anywhere near his level. Like, he is fast, he is almost completely bulletproof, he heals extremely quickly, so even if he's hit with something bad enough to actually injure him, it's gone in a couple of minutes. He can crush metal with his bare hands. He is crazy. He is crazy powerful. Like, he completely wrecks the power curve of this world. And his memories are mostly gone, but he does remember enough to know that he was some sort of militant leftist who fought in the revolution, and we do learn a bit more about that as the book goes on. Even the martyrs, while he hates what they're fighting for, he sees them generally as people who are overall decent, but they've been brainwashed to fight for a bad cause. So he's empathetic to a fault, which is a good flaw for a character to have. You know, it's really, really interesting to see someone who struggles with just feeling really bad for the enemy. He is also very funny. In fact, this book as a whole is pretty funny. It has a lot of good jokes both in the narration and in the dialogue, and Roland's laid-back attitudes towards basically everything and his weird way of describing stuff made me laugh out loud several times. It's also worth noting, there's a whole subplot where Roland needs to disguise himself, and Roland is black. So he cuts the face off of a corpse and puts it on himself, and then through like cybernetic, bionic, nanomachine, science fiction mumbo jumbo, he just turns his skin white temporarily. So he just looks white for a big chunk of this book, and I'll be honest, I was just picturing this the whole time. I will say that Roland's arc goes in a weird direction and winds up in a weird place by the end, but that's for the spoiler section. So now we reach Sasha, who is the weakest of the leads by a huge, huge margin. She's from Virginia, which is in a new country called the American Federation. It's a peaceful place, and it seems to be relatively well off. She lives a normal, middle-class life where she goes to high school and shit, but she got radicalized into being a Christian and then decided to marry her online boyfriend who is also a terrorist. And I know that that's a thing that has happened in the real world, but I feel zero sympathy for the people who did it. Because they are stupid. The people who did that are dumb. It worked out badly for just about all of them, because it turns out being the wife of a terrorist really sucks. And if they couldn't figure that out on their own, then they are idiots. Sasha arrives in the Heavenly Kingdom pretty early on in the book, and it's not what she hoped for, because she's an idiot. And her character arc is all about her becoming disillusioned with her ideals, but it happens so quickly that she just looks like she never really held those ideals in the first place. And so she winds up looking like, say it with me, an idiot. I mean, she literally gets there and goes, "You mean to tell me that the people who I knew were doing public executions are doing public executions? This is uncomfortable for me." We don't get to see her get radicalized either, because she already is by the time the story begins. It's kind of implied that a lot of people are being radicalized because they just don't have a healthy social life. Like, they're just spending all their time on the internet and don't really have friends or a healthy family situation. But that's it. We just get it implied. So we're kind of missing that part of the equation too. And overall, I just didn't like Sasha that much. And I know I haven't spent much time going over the actual plot. So basically, when the Heavenly Kingdom starts pushing south into Texas, they capture a few people from a nomadic city. It's called the City on Wheels, or Rolling Fuck, depending on who you ask. The people from the city are called Fuckians, which is beautiful. And the Fuckians actually want to help the Texans fight the Heavenly Kingdom, and if they work together, then they might be able to beat those guys back. But they can't fight the Heavenly Kingdom quite yet because some of their own are being held hostage, so that's why they send in Roland and Manny to rescue them. And they infiltrate the Heavenly Kingdom by joining their army. Again, they're taking basically any warm bodies that they can find at that point. And so from there, that's like a good ways into the book by the time we get to that point. There is a lot of setup before then, but you know, that's what happens. From there, we get some action, a few twists and turns, more action, and a little bit of action on the side. It's very fun, and the pacing is good up until the climax, and I'll be honest, the climax was a bit of a letdown. Because by the time we reach the climax, by the time we reach the big final battle, the heroes don't feel like they're on the back foot, which is generally what you want. They feel like they were already destined to win, and they had every advantage by this point. And the overall conflict doesn't feel like it was resolved, like not even temporarily, where like, okay, it's resolved for now, but come back for the sequels if you want to find out what happens. Like, no, it just doesn't feel resolved. And I know that that's sequel baiting partially, and also it's just partially realism. Like, modern wars tend to not end after one moderate-sized battle. But still, it was a bit of a letdown after everything up until that point was so good. So overall, I did enjoy this book. It's fun and funny a lot of the time, but even when things are enjoyable and more lighthearted, there's a tinge of depression around everything. You know, it's made clear that the violence is everywhere. We're only seeing the violence in this one area of Texas, but it's made clear similar shit is happening all over the place. And the future is uncertain. It's probably bad. All the problems that caused the fighting in the first place are completely unaddressed by the end of the book. And at the end, there's characters who even just straight up say, yeah, the world fucking sucks, so I'm just gonna do drugs and try to ride this out. Like, I'm not even joking. That's basically what someone says. I can't say everything that happens here is unrealistic, but it's not for everyone, man. It's not for everyone. Again, it can be depressing at times. If anything about the premise of this book sounds interesting to you, I would recommend checking it out. Or if you just want to laugh at a drug-fueled wartime adventure. So, if you fit into either of those categories, check out the book. Thanks again to NOLA for sponsoring this video. Check out the pinned comment below to get a great deal on a new mattress. Also, don't forget to rate this video, comment, and subscribe. Check out my Patreon and channel memberships. Consider buying my merchandise. Okay, that's it for the no spoiler section. Here's the spoiler section.
You better hold on tight, Spider Monkey.
Okay, I'll start with Sasha's time in the Heavenly Kingdom. See, her online boyfriend was a terrorist called Alexander. And when she arrives, he tells her he already has 2 other wives that she didn't know about, and he expects her to basically just be a homemaker, but she's a little annoyed by that because she doesn't want to have kids quite yet, and she's gotten a job in their hospital, and she's actually, saving people's lives, and she's happy doing that work. But Alexander, doesn't want his wife doing actual work, so he starts getting controlling and violent, and Sasha sees how poorly women are treated. Plus, there's a bunch of racism that they find off-putting. Like, the Heavenly Kingdom is mostly defined as being religious extremists, but they are also very explicitly white supremacists. So then Sasha sees this, and then she's just no longer a Christian extremist, and I don't know, maybe it seems dumber to me because I've been surrounded by that kind of crap my entire life. It seems dumb to me that someone could fall for that propaganda in the first place, but also it seems dumb to me that if they fell for it, they would move away from it that quickly and realize, oh yeah, this is not true. Because, I don't know, I know that religious fundamentalists don't respect women no matter what they say. I know that they're racist and violent and hate everything that civilized society holds dear. But again, maybe I'm biased because I've lived around it my whole life. Maybe it's easier to fall for their propaganda if you aren't immersed in it, but still, it is hard to feel some sympathy for someone who's dumb enough to walk right into this sort of environment.
Some people are really fucking stupid.
I think the whole plot with Sasha going to the Heavenly Kingdom and then becoming disillusioned with it and leaving, I think that would work if that was the plot for an entire book. But as it stands here, it only gets focus for like 10% of the word count, so there's just no time to explore all these relationships and these ideas. And overall, I felt the book was a bit too kind to the martyrs. Like, Sasha is treated too kindly, and she gives up on her beliefs too easily. And the soldiers that we see do bad things, but the book never really explores what they're like. If you want to see something that is comparable to this, you could look at biographies of guys who are from various countries and who went to go fight for ISIS. They are petty, hypocritical, vindictive, shallow, stupid, and angry at everyone but themselves for how their life has turned out. But we never really see that. We see Alexander is bad, but he seems bad just because he lied to Sasha, and also he's a misogynist. I don't know, I would have preferred more exploration of what makes these guys tick and less long diatribes about what drugs people are taking. That said, I do think Robert Evans understands what these people are like, but I'm basing that off of some of his other work in podcasting and stuff where he's talked about this sort of thing, so I don't think it really counts because he didn't put it in the book. Okay, next up, there is a minor subplot about how the Martyrs were successful in their initial offensive, partially because they used a bunch of suicide cars, just cars that are packed full of explosives. They send them places and then blow them up when they get close. However, they were controlled remotely, and that shouldn't have been possible because the SDF was using some sort of jamming technology to prevent that. And so they were wondering, how are they doing this? And eventually, Roland and Manny figure it out. It turns out the Martyrs have been taking people's brains out of their heads and somehow putting them into cars to control them. I feel like at that point it'd be easier to just drive normally, because it's a suicide bomber at that point. Wouldn't it be easier to just give the guy some keys and say, hey, drive this over there and blow it up? I'm not saying the technology of taking someone's brain out and putting it in a machine is out of place in this setting. I just think it's weird. I also think it's weird that they don't use volunteers for it. They actually force a bunch of non-white soldiers to do it. And the facility they use to do all this work is an old Tesla factory. So we have a bunch of white supremacists working out of a Tesla factory. That fits a little bit too well. And finally, to end this off, I need to talk about Roland's character arc. So during the final battle, he kills a bunch of people, and that helps jog his memories, and he remembers all of the horrible violence that he has inflicted on others over the course of his life. He helped plant a nuclear bomb in Dallas during the Revolution, and he also helped execute a bunch of children. And in spite of his noble ideals, it all wound up being for nothing. So he grabs a gun and he shoots himself in the head. And at first, it looks like he dies, but his healing factor is too strong, so he lives. It's just that he has amnesia and he doesn't remember any of the events of the book. And it's implied that that's how he lost his memory the first time, too. Because he doesn't remember losing his memory, he just knows that, yeah, I took some sort of massive blow to the head, that's why I don't remember stuff. So it's implied that, okay, yeah, he tried to kill himself that time too. So afterwards, he leaves Texas, he goes back to the shack he lived in Arizona at the beginning of the book, and personally I got the feeling that he's just going to continue this cycle, much like the remnants of the United States. Both Roland himself and what used to be the U.S. as a whole are going to engage in pointless violence. Nothing will be solved by that. Everyone will give up until they think they have something to gain by fighting again, and then the cycle will begin anew. And I don't know if that was intentional, but that's the vibe I got. The overall moral of the story seems to be that overthrowing a hated regime probably won't fix the underlying problems that caused that regime, or that regime caused in the first place. Near the end of the book, a different character who was a major player in the revolution just straight up says he wanted to collapse the American empire. Like, he didn't care if what replaced it was better or worse, he just hated it and wanted it gone. Meanwhile, Roland, who again was working with this guy, was very idealistic, and he really wanted to make the world better. But he realized that a lot of people who didn't deserve to get hurt were going to die no matter what he did. And no matter what he did, he was only useful as a weapon, so that's why he attempted suicide twice. It's a bleak ending, but it did make me stop and think for a bit. So the climax, sure, that was disappointing. The things after the climax, those did help make up for it. So yeah, that's about it. After the Revolution is a very good book, and I recommend you check it out. I know if you've watched this bit, you've been spoiled on a couple of things, but there's still plenty of stuff there that's worth checking out. Goodbye. Hi, how's it going? The video's not over yet. You see all these names here? These are my patrons. My $10 and up patrons are Arthur D. Gonzalez Martin, Brother Santodes, Carolina Clay, Chibs Ahoy, Jace Spades, Lexi Delorme, Lord Tiebreaker, Michael and Katie Hake, Mr. AR013, Proscriptions of Dwojang, Rovi, Sykes XS, Slumbering Jellyfish, Observing Outer Space, Tesla Shark, Toa Michael, Vevictus, and Wesley. Thanks to all of them. Thanks to all these other people. Those are my $5 and up patrons. And, thanks to everyone who just watches the video this far. You're all great. If you want to get your name put on here, as well as get access to early videos and exclusive videos and things of that nature, then consider donating to my Patreon or becoming a YouTube channel member. And if that's not something you feel like doing, then just dropping a like on the video, commenting on it, subscribing to my channel, making sure to watch everything I put out, that's all great too. Or just, check out my merchandise store. Please, I need to eat. Anyways, that's all. Goodbye.